Shalom, family. Shalom. Hope all is well. Hope all is well. Give a couple more seconds for everybody to come in. We'll be starting up in a second. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, family. Shalom. All right. So, shalom, family. Welcome to One Nation Israelite School. I am Officer St. John, and we're coming again with another segment called Reading the Apocrypha. Well, we also dive into the history. So, y'all get y'all Apocrypha so we could go ahead and get this reading started. So, we're going to start off in Judith chapter 1. Judith chapter 1 and verse 1. Judith chapter 1 and verse 1. In the 12th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, who reigned in Nineveh, the great city, in the days of Arphaxad, which reigned over the Medes in Ecbatane, and built in Ecbatane walls round about of stones hewn 3 cubits broad and 6 cubits long, and made the height of the wall 70 cubits, and the breadth thereof 50 cubits, and set the towers thereof upon the gates of it, and 100 cubits high, and the breadth thereof and the foundation 60 cubits. And he made the gates thereof, even gates that were raised to the height of 70 cubits, and the breadth of them was 40 cubits, for the going forth of his mighty armies, and for the setting in array of his footmen. Even in those days, King Nebuchadnezzar made war with King Arphaxad in the great plain, which is in the plain in the borders of Ragu. And there came unto him all they that dwelt in the hill country, and all that dwelt by Euphrates, and Tigris, and Hellespont, and the plain of Arioch, the king of the Elamines, and very many nations of the sons of Chalad, assembled themselves to the battle. Then Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, sent unto all that dwelt in Persia, and to all that dwelt westward, and to those that dwelt in Cilicia, and Damascus, and Libanus, and Telebanus, and to all that dwelt upon the sea coast, and to those among the nations that were of Carmel, and Galaad, and the higher Galilee, and the great plain of Edrelon, and to all that were in Samaria, and the cities thereof, and beyond Jordan unto Jerusalem, and Bethany, and Chelis, and Cades, and the river of Egypt, and Taphnes, and Ramsey, and all the land of Gethem, until ye come beyond Tanis, and Memphis, and to all the inhabitants of Egypt, until ye come to the borders of Ethiopia. But all the inhabitants of the land made light of the commandments of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians. Neither went they with him to the battle, for they were not afraid of him. Yeah, he was before them as one man, and they sent away his ambassadors from them without effect, and with disgrace. Therefore, Nebuchadnezzar was very angry with all this country, and swore by his throne and kingdom that he would surely be avenged upon all those coasts of Cilicia and Damascus and Syria, and that he would slay with the sword all the inhabitants of the land of Moab, and the children of Ammon, and all Judea, and all that were in Egypt, till ye come to the borders of the two seas. Then he marched in the battle of Ray with his power against King Arphaxad in the 17th year, and he prevailed in his battle, for he overthrew all the power of Arphaxad, and all his horsemen, and all his chariots, and became lord of his cities, and came unto Ecbatane, and took the towers, and spoiled the streets thereof, and turned the beauty thereof into shame. He took also Arphaxad and the mountains of Ragu, and smote him through with his darts, and destroyed him utterly that day. So he returned afterward to Nineveh, both he and all his company of sundry nations, being a very great multitude of men of war. And there he took his ease, and banqueted both he and his army 120 days. Chapter 2 and verse 1. Chapter 2 and verse 1. And in the 18th year, the 22nd day of the first month, there was talk in the house of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, that he should, as he said, avenge himself on all the earth. So he called unto him all his officers and all his nobles, and communicated with them his secret counsel, and concluded the afflicting of the whole earth out of his own mouth. Then they decreed to destroy all flesh that did not obey the commandments of his mouth. And when he had ended his counsel, Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, called Holofernes, the chief captain of his army, which was next unto him, and said unto him, Thus saith the great king, the Lord of the whole earth, Behold, thou shalt go forth from my presence, and take with thee men that trust in their own strength, and footmen 120,000, and the number of horses with their riders 12,000. And thou shalt go against all the west country, because they disobeyed my commandment. And thou shalt declare unto them that they prepare for me earth and water, for I will go forth in my wrath against them, and will cover the whole face of the earth with the feet of my army. And I will give them for a spoil unto them, so that their slain shall fill their valleys and brooks, and the rivers shall be filled with their dead, till it overflow. And I will lead them captives to the utmost parts of all the earth. Thou therefore shalt go forth and take beforehand for me all their coasts. And if they would yield themselves unto thee, thou shalt reserve them for me to the day of their punishment. But concerning them that rebel, let not thine eyes spare them, but put them to the slaughter, and spoil them wheresoever thou goest. For as I live, and by the power of my kingdom, whatsoever I have spoken, that will I do by my hand. And take thou heed that thou transgress none of the commandments of thy Lord, but accomplish them fully, as I have commanded thee, and defer not to do them. Then Holofernes went forth from the presence of his Lord, and called all the governors and captains and officers of the army of Assur, and he mustered the chosen man for the battle, as his Lord had commanded him, until 120,000, and 12,000 archers on horseback. And he ranged them as a great army is ordered for the war. And he took camels and asses for their carriages, a very great number, and sheep and oxen and goats without number for their provision, and plenty of victuals for every man of the army, and very much gold and silver out of the king's house. Then he went forth in all his power to go before King Nebuchadnezzar in the voyage, and to cover all the face of the earth westward with their chariots, and horsemen, and their chosen footmen. A great number also of sundry countries came with them like locusts, and like the sand of the earth, for the multitude was without number. And they went forth of Nineveh 3 days' journey toward the plain of Beth-Tleph, and pitched from Beth-Tleph near the mountain which is at the left hand of the upper Cilicia. Then he took all his army, his footmen, and his horsemen, and chariots, and went from thence into the hill country, and destroyed food and lust, and spoiled all the children of Races, and the children of Ismael, which were toward the wilderness at the south of the land of the Chileans. Then he went over Euphrates and went through Mesopotamia, and destroyed all the high cities that were upon the river Abani, till ye come to the sea. And he took the borders of Cilicia, and killed all that resisted him, and came to the borders of Japheth, which were toward the south, over against Arabia. He compassed also all the children of Madian, and burned up their tabernacles, and spoiled their sheepcotes. Then he went down into the plain of Damascus in the time of wheat harvest, and burnt up all their fields, and destroyed their flocks and herds. Also, he spoiled their cities, and utterly wasted their countries, and smote all the young men with the edge of the sword. Therefore, the fear and dread of him fell upon all the inhabitants of the seacoast, which were in Sidon and Tyrus, and them that dwelt in Ser and Arsina, and all that dwelt in Jamnan, and they that dwelt in Azotus and Askelon feared him greatly. Chapter 3 and verse 1. Chapter 3 and verse 1. So they sent ambassadors unto him to treat of peace, saying, Behold, we the servants of Nebuchadnezzar the Great, King, lie before thee. Use us as shall be good in thy sight. Behold, our houses, and all our places, and all our fields of wheat, and flocks, and herds, and all the lodges of our tents, lie before thy face. Use them as it pleases thee. Behold, even our cities, and the inhabitants thereof are thy servants. Come and deal with them as seemeth good unto thee. So the man came to Holofernes, and declared unto him after this manner. Then came he down toward the seacoast, both he and his army, and set garrisons in the high cities, and took out of them chosen man for aid. So they and all the country round about received them with garlands, with dances, and with timbrels. Yet he did cast down their frontiers, and cut down their groves, for he had decreed to destroy all the gods of the land, that all nations should worship Nebuchadnezzar only, and that all tongues and tribes should call upon him as God. Also, he came over against Esdraelon, near unto Judea, over against the great strait of Judea, and he pitched between Gebal and Scotopolis, and there he tarried a whole month, that he might gather together all the carriages of his army. Chapter 4 and verse 1. That's some good drink there. Chapter 4 and verse 1. Chapter 4 and verse 1. Now the children of Israel that dwelt in Judea heard all that Holofernes, the chief captain of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, had done to the nations, and after what manner he had spoiled all their temples, and brought them to naught. Therefore, they were exceedingly afraid of him, and were troubled for Jerusalem, and for the temple of the Lord their God. For they were newly returned from the captivity, and all the people of Judea were lately gathered together, and the vessels, and the altar, and the house were sanctified after the profanation. Therefore, they sent into all the coast of Samaria, and the villages, and to Bethhoron, and Belmont, and Belmont, and Jericho, and to Choba, and Ezra, and to the valley of Salam, and possessed themselves beforehand of all the tops of the high mountains, and fortified the villages that were in them, and laid up victuals for the provision of war, for their fields were of late reaped. Also, he said, smooth again. You already know. All right. Verse 6. Also, Joachim, Joachim, the high priest, which was in those days in Jerusalem, wrote to them that dwelt in Bethulia and Bethlehem, which is over against Ezraelon, toward the open country, near to Dothan, charging them to keep the passages of the hill country, for by them there was an entrance into Judea, and it was easy to stop them that will come up, because the passage was straight, for 2 men at the most. And the children of Israel did as Joachim, the high priest, had commanded them, with the ancients of all the people of Israel, which dwelt at Jerusalem. Then every man of Israel cried to God with great fervency and with great vehemency, that they humbled their souls, both they and their wives, and their children, and their cattle, and every stranger and hireling, and their servants brought with money, put sackcloth upon their loins. Thus every man and woman, and the little children, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, fell before the temple, and cast ashes upon their heads, and spread out their sackcloth before the face of the Lord. Also they put sackcloth about the altar, and cried to the God of Israel, all with one consent earnestly, that he would not give their children for a prey, and their wives for a spoil, and their cities of their inheritance to destruction, and the sanctuary to profanation and reproach, and for the nations to rejoice at. So God heard their prayers, and looked upon their affliction, for the people fasted many days in all Judea and Jerusalem before the sanctuary of the Lord Almighty. And Joachim, the high priest, and all the priests that stood before the Lord, and they which ministered unto the Lord, had their loins girt with sackcloth, and offered the daily burnt offering, with the vows and free gifts of the people, and had ashes on the mitres, and cried unto the Lord with all their power, that he would look upon all the house of Israel graciously. Chapter 5 and verse 1. Chapter 5 and verse 1. Then was it declared to Holofernes, the chief captain of the army of Asa, that the children of Israel had prepared for war, and had shut up the passages of the hill country, and had fortified all the tops of the high hills, and had laid impediments in the champaign countries, wherewith he was very angry, and called all the princes of Moab, and the captains of Ammon, and all the governors of the sea coast. And he said unto them, Tell me now, ye sons of Chanaan, who this people is, that dwelleth in the high country? And what are the cities that they inhabit? And what is the multitude of their army? And where is their power and strength? And what king is set over them, or captain of their army? And why have they determined not to come and meet me, more than all the inhabitants of the west? Then said Asher, the captain of all, the sons of Ammon, let my Lord now hear a word from the mouth of thy servant, and a word from the mouth of thy servant. My bad. I'll read that again. Verse 5. Then said Asher, the captain of all the sons of Ammon, let my Lord now hear a word from the mouth of thy servant, and I will declare unto thee the truth concerning this people, which dwelleth near thee, and inhabiteth the hill country. And there shall no lie come out of my mouth of thy servant. This people are descended of the Chaldeans, and they sojourned heretofore in Mesopotamia, because they would not follow the gods of their fathers, which were in the land of Chaldea. For they left the way of their ancestors, and worshiped the God of heaven, the God who they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their gods, and they fled into Mesopotamia, and sojourned there many days. Then a God commanded them to depart from the place where they sojourned, and to go into the land of Chanaan, where they dwelt and were increased with gold and silver, and with very much cattle. But when a famine covered all the land of Canaan, they went down into Egypt, and sojourned there, while they were nourished, and became there a great multitude, so that one could not number their nation. Therefore the king of Egypt rose up against them, and dealt subtly with them, and brought them low with laboring in brick, and made them slaves. Then they cried unto their God, and he smote all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues, so the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. And God dried the Red Sea before them, and brought them to Mount Sinai, and Cades Barnea, and cast forth all that dwelt in the wilderness. So they dwelt in the land of the Amorites, and they destroyed by their strength all them of Esbon, and passing over Jordan, they possessed all the hill country. And they cast forth before them the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Jebusite, and the Shechemite, and all the Girgasites. And they dwelt in that country many days. And whilst they sinned not before their God, they prospered, because the God that hateth iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles very sore, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs. And the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. But now are they returned to their God, and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem, where their sanctuary is, and are seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Now therefore, my Lord and governor, if there be any error in this people, and they sin against their God, let us consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up, and we shall overcome them. But if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my Lord now pass by, lest their Lord defend them, and their God before them, and we become a reproach before all the world. And when after had finished these things, all the people standing round about the tent murmured. And the chief man of Holofernes, and all that dwelt by the seaside, and in Moab spake that he should kill him. For say they, we will not be afraid of the face of the children of Israel. For lo, it is a people that have no strength, nor power for a strong battle. Now therefore, Lord Holofernes, we will go up, and they shall be a prey to be devoured of all thine army. So family, I'm gonna stop right there. It was a short reading. Lord's will. Lord's will, y'all got something from the reading. And when we come back together, we'll pick back up in Judith chapter 6. That's the end of our segment called Reading the Apocrypha. Lord's will, everybody, day in captivity won't be as bad. Lord's will, the Most High be with you. Shalom, Most High in Christ. Till next time, family. Right. That's that song too. Shalom, all praises, family. Shalom, all praise. All glory to the Father. Most High in Christ, y'all. We out.